Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about Kong Jin, or empty force, in the internal martial arts, which some people think is something supernatural, but it's actually not. I'm going to be reading an excerpt. I'm going to be reading a few pages from the book Warriors of Stillness, Volume 1 by Yan Diepersloot. He also wrote Volume 2, The Tao of Yiquan. Both books are quite good, and they discuss the internal martial arts from a very physical perspective, not a chi supernatural type of perspective. Because the guy seems to be a materialist, like I myself am. So I am going to be reading these few pages. Hopefully, you find it interesting, and then I might also be talking a little bit about Wang Xiang Zai and internal martial arts. Now, I think they would be very useful in a commune. Okay, so the first thing is, says, Master Kai also explained this sphericity by saying that, quote, the more circles I make internally, the more hands I have, unquote. His hand is going every which way internally, while externally still. In this way, quote, every point of your body is like a hand. You can discharge from it, unquote. This is a level of accomplishment characterized by an extreme lightness of touch because there is absolutely no exertion of strength. In the literal sense, the opponent's energy is borrowed and turned against him so efficiently that he pushes himself off your sphere. This lightness of touch and feeling naturally evolves into a state of no-touch feeling. The term Kong Jin, or empty force, is used to describe two different phenomena. The first and lesser known refers to a method of disconnecting or emptying from an opponent. When you are playing push hands with Master Kai, he will often break contact with you in such a way as to create a type of kinesthetic and perceptual vacuum into which one's center is sucked uncontrollably and forcefully. The result is an involuntary startle reflex, a loss of control, and a feeling of total vulnerability in the face of Master Kai's superior awareness and physical ability backed up with his integral force. So in this respect, the term empty force is descriptive in an ironic way. Since there is nothing there, nobody is touching any longer. It is obviously empty. The irony is that the energy or force that is moving us is our own, activated by Master Kai's awareness. Briefly put, when his opponent is within striking distance, Master Kai is capable of controlling him without touching him. By neutralizing his opponent's intention with his awareness and discharging his own intention, Master Kai is able to repel his opponent. The experience of this Kong Jin, or empty force, is disconcerting in the extreme, and physically sickening to the stomach. The explanation? When one's intention is neutralized by a superior awareness, we are rendered open and vulnerable to hostile penetrating forces. In fact, we are disabled by fear, and the startle reflex takes over. We tense and consequently lose our awareness, as well as our center, thereby leaving ourselves open to our opponent's mercy. Hence the frightening, sinking, and nauseating feeling when experiencing the empty force. You realize that your intention was being neutralized by his awareness as you were having it, or perhaps even before you had it. Not because he's telepathic or anything, or precognitive, but because he can see what he can predict your movements, probably because he knows you well, and or because he can see how you're wrongly weighted or how you're wrongly moving and what you're likely to do next. So then he can predict what you're going to do and then use it against you, you see, in push hands. In this way, the internal arts really operate in the psychological dimension. Quote, it is because you don't initiate the attack that you can control everybody, and that control resides in your stillness, not your movement. Mentally, you have to be calm when you are pushed. You must not think about it, just accept it and go with it, automatically relating it to your center and filling the back. It has to be reflexive, automatic yet aware. At the place and time your opponent touches you, probe, find, and go for the center, instantaneously inducing resistance and frame, and simultaneously discharging your integral force, unquote. Fourth level, empty force and interacting fields of awareness. From dwelling on the structure of our sphere in level 1, our awareness moves to dwell in the center of our human sphere in level 2, on the periphery of our sphere in level 3. In the fourth and highest level of development, our awareness moves to dwell beyond the physical body into the outer fringes of our organismic field. On this level, the term Kong Jin, or empty force, refers to interaction at a distance in which one party seems to be manipulating the other at the end of an invisible rope. In the Chinese tradition, this is the level where the qi and the yi, or the intention, have been further refined into shen, spirit, which then expands to return and dwell in wu, nothingness, or everywhereness. On the martial arts level, this is the level of Kong Jin, in which the master seems to be moving his opponents at will from a distance. There are few practices in the Chinese martial arts that generate more dispute and controversy than the use of empty force. Some swear to its irresistibility, while others sneer at it as empty farce. The truth is considerably more complex and subtle than these two extremes. Investigation into the genesis and evolution of its practice show that Kong Jin is a perceptual game that develops field awareness. The practice of empty force will increase our awareness of ourselves and other people as nodes in interacting energy fields. This leads to consciously living everyday life in the truth that nature is organized by evolving fields, to use Rupert Sheldrake's words. To practice is to utilize this knowledge, evolving a lifestyle, a way of being in the world that makes our life more harmonious and growing in empathy and compassion. Master Kai told me the story of how he first learned of empty force and later developed the ability. Master Li Huanji of Shanghai, the student of Tung Yingji, one of Yang Qingfu's most prominent students, is famous for his empty force. Master Kai never personally witnessed Li Huanji doing it, but heard about his empty force ability through Li Huanji's son, who is Master Kai's college friend and martial arts enthusiast and the author of one of the classic books on Taiji Chuan entitled The Essential Principle. Also, one of Master Kai's own teachers, Mr. Guo Da Dong, had been a student of Mr. Li Huanji in the mid-50s and had personally experienced his empty force. Master Kai discovered how it worked himself one day in 1974 in Guangdong. He was working with an exceptionally perceptive and sensitive student. It was almost by accident, Master Kai said, that once he used his intention, exerting no physical force, and yet his student moved away. When he realized the implications of his discovery, he started a process of further experimentation and discovery. With some of his students and friends, he began a program of systematic practice in the training of awareness and intention. Master Ha recalled his first experience with Master Kai's empty force while visiting him in Canton, China in 1979. Quote, "When I saw him working with his students, they would jump back 20 to 30 feet when he merely pointed at them. At first I could hardly believe my eyes, figuring it had to be either a miracle or a joke. But in discussing it with him, he explained to me that they were merely playing with the intention and its perception. In other words, with subtle energy, not irresistible force. Then when I played push hands with his students, I quickly understood its value. They were so sensitive and quick that at that time I could not push them. They perceived and were able to neutralize my intention to push them the very moment I had it. That was a real eye-opener." Unquote. The Taiji Chuan system and tradition, particularly Yang family style, is famous for its theoretical and practical emphasis on the neurosensory over the neuromuscular. The traditional precept is that, quote, "awareness overcomes strength and technique," unquote, as manifested both by Li Huanji and Master Kai. Development of empty force awareness is a logical outgrowth of this orientation of the Taiji Chuan tradition. Kong Jin, or empty force, is the logical and most refined extension or outgrowth of Ting Qin, or the ability to listen to and interpret energy, or Ting Jin, or the ability to listen to and interpret energy that we try to cultivate in push hands practice. When we begin push hands practice, our touch is inevitably heavy, because we are still coming from the point of view of strength. But as we progress, we begin to experience relaxation, and then softness overcomes strength and hardness. Because, you don't resist them, you just yield and move out of the way of their force, so they can't push you, even though they're using strength and you're using softness, you see. So it says, softness then overcomes strength and hardness. Push hands becomes touch hands, and our touch naturally becomes lighter and lighter. We begin to understand how awareness overcomes technique. Taken to its extreme in Kong Jin, we no longer touch at all, because the interplay occurs on the energetic level between the two fields of awareness. The energy bubbles or spheres constituted by these fields of awareness are interacting beyond the level of their physical crystallizations. In my own experience, because I had the opportunity to play a lot with Master Kai, I became extremely sensitized to the sphere of his physical influence, the space within his reach. Here, non-contact is more dangerous than contact, so that even when not touching, the field of our interacting awarenesses is very charged, strong and powerful. I know that, perceptually speaking, he has already disarmed me with his awareness, taking control of my center. In this relationship, he intends and I jump. Thus, empty force is the merger of and control over one field of awareness by another without physical contact. The genesis of empty force is in the closely interpenetrating fields of a near-contact situation. Its development results in distance field awareness. As familiarity increases, the range of play naturally extends out, at least in theory, infinitely stretching into the perceptual limits of our fields into more subtle interchange. Playing this game, I would jump 20 to 30 feet by only a look from Master Kai. In this game, the fields of the participants are interacting in a specific manner. There is a sender and receiver. The rule of the game is the agreement between the sender and the receiver. Like a marionette on invisible strings, the receiver embodies or acts out in movement the perceived intent of the sender. If he perceives being pushed back, he goes back. If he perceives being pulled forward, he goes forward. If he perceives being shoved to the left or the right, he will do so accordingly. If he perceives a somersault intention, he'll somersault. If he perceives a strong intention, he'll react strongly. If he perceives a weak one, he will react in mild movement, etc. The person moves only because he has agreed to do so under the rules of the game. What is really developed in this training is that very special type of awareness and sensitivity, the so-called sixth sense of field awareness, which embraces but goes beyond our visual or auditory components. But he's not talking about anything supernatural here. He's just talking about your awareness of, three-dimensional space and of your own balance and in relation to the master's intent to manipulate your balance, right? So it's nothing supernatural. I think that was about all I had to read on that. Then there's some more stuff in the other book, but a lot of it is repeat. He used a lot of the same text for this book as well, but he does say some interesting things. At one point, he mentions Cheng-Man Ching and something that he said relating to empty force, used by this other master. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, right. There's this, the guy, Lei Huanji, was a top student of Dong Yingji, who is Yang Qingfu's best student. But Cheng-Man Ching, who is probably the guy who's most responsible for bringing Tai Chi to the West, and he made it easier and more relaxed. He changed little bits of certain postures and stuff, certain movements, to make it more relaxing so it would be used for health practice. But Cheng-Man Ching was himself actually quite good at using Tai Chi for martial arts, for push hands and stuff. He was really good at that, but he mainly taught it as like a health practice, and he brought it to the West. I can't remember when he did that, in the 70s maybe or something. I read about it, but I can't remember when he did it, but it was a long time ago. But you can see video, I think, on YouTube of Cheng-Man Ching doing the Tai Chi form. But anyway, it says that even in Li Huangji's time, great misunderstandings and misrepresentations regarding the nature and use of empty force created ongoing controversy within the world of internal martial arts. Cheng-Man Ching, for example, did not think much of Li Huangji and his talent. And Cheng-Man Ching said, quote, "I knew Li. His Tai Chi was not so good. He could do the thing you mention, empty force, but only because you're a student. The trick will not work on an equal or a superior," unquote. So clearly Cheng-Man Ching knew about empty force and knew that it was not anything supernatural. But of course, the Chinese, being a deceptive people and a very mystery-oriented people, they like to mystify things and make them more complicated than they have to be. In very Chinese fashion, they seem to have, not done much to disabuse people of the idea that empty force is something supernatural, even though they could have done so. Or maybe the masters themselves were deluded, or maybe they thought it was self-apparent that it wasn't anything supernatural, and if you believe that it was, you're just an idiot, and that's not their fault. But I think it's kind of all of those things. Perhaps a bit of intentional deceptiveness, the love of mystery that the Chinese have, the fact that the master probably thought it was obvious that it's not supernatural, the fact that he probably, that the students were obviously so stupid that they fell for it and thought that it was something supernatural, etc. It's probably all of that. But it's quite an interesting thing, this whole empty force thing. It's an extension of push hands, that you're not going to be able to develop. I mean, you're not going to be able to be moved by empty force, so-called empty force, unless you are like a push hands practitioner, in which case then you're just reacting in a push hands kind of way without actually touching them. And you kind of can feel their intention or where your balance is off or whatever, so they kind of manipulate you. Kind of like mentalism. Mentalism is nothing supernatural from what I understand. I don't know much about mentalism, but it seems to be like mind reading, but it's really not, very much, empty force is kind of like the physical equivalent of mentalism. It seems to be something supernatural, but it really only occurs because the person doing it and or the receiver are both very aware. That hyper awareness can, lead to this, phenomenon, this quote unquote phenomenon of empty force. You see, just like, mentalists or people who are really good at reading other people and eliciting information from them without them realizing it, like a fortune teller, right? Like a fortune teller can read the opponent, like especially if they're like an intentionally deceptive fortune teller. But I think probably a lot of fortune tellers who actually are not intentionally deceptive, they actually believe in the tarot or whatever, and they're reading the cards for you, like because they can see the way you dress and the way you move and hear the way you talk and see your facial expressions and everything about you like that. They can subconsciously glean a ton of information from that, and then they can interpret the cards in the light of that information, and then that can make it so that they can give you a really accurate reading about yourself. And it seems to be something supernatural, but really either they're really good at reading people and they're intentionally manipulating you and pretending like they can read the tarot, or they just read all that information on a subconscious level and they actually think that they are reading the tarot and telling the truth, and they don't realize they're actually not doing anything supernatural even though they think they are. Either way, it's the same thing. You're absorbing all this information from the client, and then you're kind of giving it back to them or reading the tarot in the light of that information. And then it seems like, the tarot cards are predicting something or giving a really accurate personality assessment or whatever, or life assessment, when really they're not at all. It's just, they're quite ambiguous in the way you can interpret each card. And so that means, in the light of the information you can get by looking at the client and hearing them speak and seeing how they dress and other facial expressions, you can, properly interpret the cards to give a very accurate reading in that way. Conjuring is kind of like the physical equivalent of reading the tarot for somebody, and like it seems something supernatural, but really it's not at all, even though it can be quite accurate. It's the same type of thing, right? And I also want to say I'm going to do another video about this, I'm going to read one or two, I think 2 chapters, quotes from Sam Tam, which is in one of these books, at the end of one of these books, and maybe I'll read the chapter or 2 on Wang Xiangzai. There's selected writings and quotes from him, which are really good. But in this video, I'm not going to read that stuff because that would make this video too long. But I do just want to say that I think practice of the internal arts, such as practice of the Tai Chi Chuan form, the Liu He Ba, or the Liu He Ba Fa form, coupled with, the form of one of those 2 martial arts, coupled with, standing stake meditation, Hun Yuan Zhuang or Hun Yuan Gong or whatever it's called. I think it's called, like where you have your, feet are shoulder width apart and your knees are only slightly bent and your arms are as if they're holding a big beach ball in front of you, or, your palms are facing inward and they're either, in front of your chest or in front of your stomach or somewhere in between there. And you just hold that position, that static position, wherever you choose to put your arms, in front of your chest or in front of your stomach. You just hold that position for anywhere from, like 10 minutes to 4 hours. Literally, like some people do that practice for hours a day, every single day, for like years and years. And that's how you develop really extremely strong body awareness, the ability to both be super relaxed and at the same time be, instantly prepared to react absolutely instantaneously with extreme force, while also at the same time being super sensitive to your balance and the other person's force, and not resisting them, using their force against them, etc. So I think if a commune used this kind of thing as a practice, I think it could probably absolutely replace religion, replace the need for a synthetic religion, because it's cultivating character because of the standing meditation. It's cultivating relaxation because of the form practice. It's cultivating the ability to be relaxed and deal with people in a non-forceful way by practicing push hands. It's developing martial arts ability. It's teaching people the importance of awareness. It's strengthening awareness. It's teaching people the importance of being mindful. It's teaching them, because standing stake meditation, like you're holding a ball in front of you, an invisible beach ball, and your fingers are not touching. They're probably 6 to 12 inches apart from each other, about, depends how close you want to put them. It's up to you. But how big the imaginary beach ball you're holding is. But that kind of thing, it's even also called standing Zen. I think it was Kenichi Sawai of Taiki Ken, I think he called it standing Zen. Maybe some other people called it standing Zen as well. So it's like a Zen practice, but it's also got the whole physical aspect of it, body awareness and, awareness of other people's force, and it improves your balance. The form practice and the relaxation of the standing stake meditation is good for health. It really does increase your energy and your libido and improves your balance, and it can improve your awareness, helps your mind settle down, all that kind of stuff. It really, really could, if a whole commune were practicing that kind of stuff every day, standing stake meditation for, let's say, like 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day, and then do like the form practice for like a half an hour a day. And then like, push hands practice maybe for half an hour a day. So like do a half an hour of each of those a day, for a total of an hour and a half a day. And that would probably be more than enough to really get the whole commune, like if everybody were practicing that would get the whole commune really unified, really like everybody would be improving their character through those practices, which are, good for health and character development and, strengthening your mind and stuff. It would help emotional control. It would help you, strengthen your control over your emotions. It'd help you get along better with other people, etc., etc. Like, I think this could really be a form of agnostic, atheist type of religion that can, replace a need for a religion or a synthetic religion. Doesn't exclude anyone, doesn't require any supernatural belief. It upgrades the mind. It's good for self-defense. It's good for health, right? It's like this all-inclusive, perfect type of practice, right? Like, it's just absolutely perfect. So I think it'd probably work much better than, like tarot or Kabbalah or Western occultism or choosing your own deity and meditating on it even though it's not real. Like, I think this kind of practice would probably be better than, for a commune, than, the other kind of thing that I talked about before when I've talked about a synthetic religion. And it's suitable for everybody too. Like Wang Xiangzai taught Yiquan to even, I think he even taught it to old people who had never done anything like that before. They're in their 60s or something, or maybe even 70s, and he teaches them standing stake meditation. Obviously a really easy form of it. Their knees aren't bent very far or anything, but he teaches them that, and then it improves their health. And young people can do it as well. Like Wang Xiangzai, he started doing standing stick meditation when he was taught it by his uncle, Guo Yunshen, a very, very famous Xing Yi practitioner who's famous for his explosive power. He was rarely defeated. The guy was just an absolute beast. He was unstoppable. He really perfected his art in prison where he was manacled and stuff, and so he could just practice standing stake meditation. And so he practiced that, and that helped him develop really explosive power. And he became really famous for his explosive power, Guo Yunshen did. Wang Xiangzai was his nephew. And Guo Yunshen's son and his lineage holder, he died. He got thrown from a horse or something and killed. And so Wang Xiangzai, his parents wanted him to learn from Guo Yunshen because of... he had like asthma and stuff, and it was like or maybe he had asthma and then he got over it, but his health was like permanently harmed by that or something. So then Wang Xiangzai got a couple of recommendations from family members and stuff, and then Guo Yunshen took him on as a student, even though he didn't want to. And then he trained Wang Xiangzai from the age of 8 years old to 13 years old. And he made him stand in like really low postures, like doing standing stake, but in a really low posture. So you're having to use a lot of muscles of your legs to keep yourself stationary, as opposed to, barely bending your knees at all, in which case it's much, much easier to do standing stake. But if you do like a low standing stake posture, it's really hard. And he would check. It's right there in the book, A Tao of Yiquan. It talks about it, how Guo Yunshen would make him get up early and go do it. And then, Guo Yunshen would maybe either sleep or read or do something else or whatever. And then he'd come back out after, Wang Xiangzai had been practicing for like maybe an hour and a half or something, or maybe 45 minutes, or a really long time, like maybe an hour or two. And he'd been standing there in this really low posture. And then Guo Yunshen would check the floor all around him. And if the floor was not sufficiently damp with perspiration, if he wasn't sweating enough, he'd make him keep doing it for even longer. So, like, it was really hard training that Wang Xiangzai did regarding standing stake meditation when he was young. So, like, if you want to do it in a really physically demanding way like that, you can do it, or you can do it in a really non-physically demanding way like old people do for health cultivation, right? And, so it really is this sort of universal practice. You can do it for meditation, you can do it for health, you can do it for balance cultivation, you can do it for strength cultivation, you can do it for martial arts, and basically it usually works for all those. But it has multiple uses. Standing stake meditation does, and the form is really good too, like the Tai Chi Chuan form or the Liu He Ba Fa form. Actually, Wang Xiangzai, one of the only two people who ever beat him was Wu Yi Hui, master of Liu He Ba Fa. And so I don't know why Wang Xiangzai was so against forms, considering, one of the masters, only one of two people out of 1,000 who ever beat him in a fight, in a contest. One of the only people who ever beat him was an internal martial arts practitioner, who presumably practiced the form of Liu He Ba Fa, because that's what he was a practitioner of. And, but yet, Wang Xiangzai was very against forms. He was very much like Bruce Lee in that way. He was against set forms. But he himself did practice movement practices, but they were this health dance that someone else recreated from these paintings in like a Buddhist temple or something. And he also practiced free form movement that was like, unscripted, just like it'd be different every time. He practiced that kind of thing. But he didn't practice like the Tai Chi Chuan form of the Liu He Ba Fa form. Wang Xiangzai did not. But it seems a little weird to me. I don't know why he didn't, because like I said, one of the guys who was even better than him was a practitioner of Liu He Ba Fa. But I guess that's about all I had to say, other than like, oh yeah, I also want to mention that like regarding it being really good for commune and stuff, it's like it would teach the commune members this way of like relating through push hands, like not resisting people. You know what I mean? And like that is a really good way to learn to interact with people, right? Like not resisting, like going with the flow. You know what I mean? Like people who can do that can be very effective in either manipulating other people in a bad way, or like, you could view it in a skillful means Buddhist kind of way. That is, manipulating them for their own good. Teaching them things and guiding them and mentally and emotionally, even though they don't realize they're being guided, because you're so sensitive to them that you can, see how they are and not upset them or offend them or whatever, and so that you can, kind of teach them the way they need to be taught, so they'll be properly receptive, so that they can learn, right? Buddhism calls this skillful means, and other people call this having charisma, or having good people skills or whatever. But one of the guys, Sam Tam, talks about that a little bit. He says it kind of like he used to be an eagle claw practitioner, and he never hurt anybody, but everybody was always scared of him because of he wasn't using the push hands type of way of relating to people. But like once he learned push hands and got really good with that, it became much more fun, and people stopped fearing him and stuff like this. So it's like it's a win-win, you know what I mean? Like push hands is better, right? And everything in society is becoming more perceptual and manipulative and all this kind of stuff anyway. So like subtlety and manipulation are going to be an important thing going forward, I think. But not necessarily manipulation in terms of dishonesty, but manipulation more in terms of like, subtlety of presentation of what you're trying to say, so that, you can not let your words be misconstrued. You can make sure that other people are receptive to what you're saying, etc. This is becoming more and more the case already. Like people don't actually try to beat people up who they disagree with these days. They'll just like film them and then like mock them online, for example, right? Like everything is becoming like perceptual warfare. You know what I mean? So I think practice of push hands will really kind of put people, like especially a commune, if everybody practices it, it'll put that whole commune on that level of, being very perceptual and manipulative, but not necessarily in a dishonest or bad way or a predatory way. More in like a peaceful kind of way, right? So I think that's I think that's mainly what I wanted to say. I think the internal arts could very well function as the religion of the commune without any kind of need for any other kind of synthetic religion. No deity practice necessary, no use of tarot necessary or Kabbalah or anything. Just like, the agnostic materialist meditation of standing stake and the meditation, if you want to call it that, of practicing the form of Tai Chi Chuan or Liu He Ba Fa, and the people skills practice, as well as the physical awareness and martial arts skills practice that is push hands. It teaches you like, people skills, and it teaches you, it can help. It doesn't necessarily have to, or it doesn't always, but, it can, push hands practice can help you get better dealing with people, and It can, definitely train martial arts, which is what it was originally for, and, helps you train awareness, helps you become more aware of 3D space, and like I said, all this stuff cultivates not just greater awareness and better people skills and martial ability, but also health as well. So I think that would perhaps be the perfect practice for a commune to adopt. Like I said, I'll be doing a future video, maybe a future 2 or 3 videos where I read other chapters from these books. I'm not going to read the whole books; they're actually quite big. The books they're quite large. Let's see, this one book, this one is, let's see how many pages. It's almost 250 pages, and the other one is that long as well. And we're talking like large trade paperback form. We're not even talking mass market here, although the words are pretty big. So I'm definitely not going to read these whole books or anything, but yeah, I am going to be reading a few more chapters in future videos from these books. You really might want to consider reading these books. They're actually quite good. Not a bunch of chi stuff, not a bunch of mysticism stuff, mainly just like the mechanics of push hands and standing stake practice as it relates to push hands and as it relates to proper posture, like realigning your spine in the proper way. Which most people have a badly aligned spine, is too curvy, not from left to right viewed from the back, but from front to back, it's too curvy. It talks about some of the history of it, like how some of these practices came from Buddhism originally, some of the practices. Some of the other practices, kind of like a qigong, different kinds of holding the ball postures. He shows a photo of like 8 different variations of the posture. You do like 5 minutes of each one. The guy was Han Xuan Ping or something. Han Xingyuan. He shows him in the postures, and that guy was a student of Wang Xiangzai himself. So I assume that was a practice that Wang Xiangzai had people practice, 5 minutes in each of those standing stake postures that are slightly different. The hands in front of the chest, the hands in front of the body, and then the palms facing out, the palms facing in, the palms facing down, the palms facing toward you, like all these little variations, like there's 8 of them. And what else? He talks about Tai Chi. He doesn't talk about Liu He Ba Fa or Wu Yi Hui, which is really interesting. He does give a bunch of quotes from Wang Xiangzai that are really good. The guy was really, really interesting. Quite commendable morally, I think, Wang Xiangzai. Although at the same time, he was actually quite outspoken and brusque. And I could see why, he might have offended a lot of people or whatever, right? Like he basically thought the Tai Chi Chuan form was trash, right? But interestingly, he did say something interesting about that. He said originally Tai Chi Chuan was called Lao San Dao or something like that, which translates as old 3 cuts, I think it is. I could be getting the words wrong, but it's something like that. It translates to old 3 cuts. And then he said later on it was expanded to 13 movements. And then he said it was later on after that it was abused further. Those are his words. It was further abused and expanded to 150 movements. So he really had little or no respect for the long form of Tai Chi Chuan. And I think he had little or no respect for other long forms or anything like that as well. But interestingly enough, the people who do practice those long forms, like the Yang family people and, the people who practice Bagua Zhang, the people who practice Liu He Ba Fa, these people also practice standing stake, just like standing meditation, just like Wang Xiangzai's martial art is built all around. So there's actually a lot of overlap between these arts, even though it may not seem like it at first, because Wang Xiangzai was sort of a reformer of those arts, right? And he demystified them and stuff. He tried to take the whole chi aspect out of it entirely, which a lot of people appreciate. But I could probably keep going on and on and on about it, but I'm gonna stop here, and hopefully someone liked this video. Peace.